What is up, guys? How you doing? I hope your day is going well. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Rick Kakis, and today we're going to be talking about the best ways to get loot within the Division 2. Specifically, our scope is going to be somewhat narrowed to World Tier 5, but this will absolutely apply to lower world tiers. So, we are talking about a bunch of different things today because you've really got to look at the perspective of what are you trying to get. If you're just trying to get sheer volume of loot, well, we're going to talk about that, but that's going to be certain activities to get that result. If you want to level up your specialist and get loot along with as many specialist points as you can get, well, those are other activities. So keep that in mind while we dissect these different loot getting methods. Now, let's start off first with, well, how many people are you playing with? This is actually going to greatly impact the activities you want to do to get the best loot. Let's start at the top. If you're playing with a group of 3 other people, so you have a full 4-man squad, the best activity you can do to get just tons of loot is the Dark Zone. Now, why am I saying that? And some of you are watching going, oh no, please, anything but the Dark Zone, because the Dark Zone can absolutely be quite a frustrating experience, and it's hard to really evaluate how much loot you're getting when you're getting just teabagged by the guy who keeps killing you, right? So, the reason the Dark Zone is what I'm going to recommend for specifically a 4-man squad is because Dark Zone is balanced so much differently when it comes to PvE enemies. The thing about the Dark Zone is that, in fact, the vast majority, I would say, of the loot you're getting is just awarded directly to you. If you are not even looking at the contaminated loot that requires you to extract, you are still getting tons of loot very, very quickly. Now, if you do manage to extract a few times in a play session, your loot per minute, essentially, your loot per hour goes through the roof. And the reason being is because you kill enemies unbelievably fast. If that same 4-man squad exits the Dark Zone and engages a random roaming patrol of red bars, those red bars are going to be harder to kill than the gold bars in the Dark Zone. And the reason is that scaling. The more players you have, the harder enemies are to kill in PvE. In fact, this is another general rule in the middle of this topic, and that is you actually have a sweet spot of grinding in PvE of around 2 to 3 players. You don't want to have the full 4 because at that point it's diminishing returns. Aside from the benefit you get of your squad mates being able to share loot with you and vice versa, enemies are going to be substantially harder to take down than if you were just running with one other teammate. But like we were talking about, if there is 4, Dark Zone. In there, enemies are just as easy to kill, whether you roll in solo or with a squad. So when you are with a squad, you steamroll through landmarks. So definitely prioritize whatever Dark Zone is occupied. That's going to result in more hard and challenging landmarks. And again, with a 4-man squad, it's easy pickings. You just destroy enemies. You're going to cut through gold bars with a single magazine. But of course, the question then comes up, well, what if I'm not in a 4-man squad? What activities should I prioritize then? Well, your focus is absolutely going to shift off of the Dark Zone and onto PvE. Now, some pitfalls to avoid. The number one thing I would recommend not grinding is Strongholds. Strongholds simply do not give you that much loot for how long they take. Now, if you look at how much loot you get in one stronghold compared to, one control point, the stronghold is way more lucrative. But the amount of time you're going to spend doing that stronghold is really its pitfall. And next on that list, it's actually got to be missions. Missions as well really aren't that rewarding in the long run, and they take you sometimes a considerable amount of time to do, especially if you're just solo. But with that being said, something that really does impact this is the difficulty. And I really want to say this is a super important tip. You get massively diminishing returns for heightening that difficulty. Especially when we're talking about the new maximum difficulty within World Tier 5, Heroic. Heroic makes things unbelievably more hard for strongholds and missions, and really doesn't offer much in return. If you actually look at the reward tables for making enemies way harder, for making it so that if you die, you're put back to the beginning of the mission, you get one extra guaranteed high-end item drop. That is just not worth it. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to realize that's not worth it. Unless you want to challenge yourself, you are absolutely better off doing, honestly, just hard. Grinding hards, or even grinding the normal, I would say, solo can actually be a relatively efficient way to level up. Now, there is an exception, and that is the daily hard and challenging mission. Those are going to be a little bit more lucrative, and they're going to give you points towards your specialist. However, remember that the daily hard mission, if it's just a normal mission, it gives you one point towards your specialist. Now that's really not worth it, especially when you can do something I would recommend doing, is grinding bounties. Bounties are shockingly lucrative. They are going to award you with actually a considerable amount of gear. On top of the random world drops, you're going to get 2, 3, 4 pieces per boss kill, which is, pretty much what you're guaranteed to get if you're doing a mission. You just get those guaranteed 2, 3, 4 boss drop items, and so there's really not that much less you're getting in terms of just raw loot, and you're also getting a crap ton of specialist points. Just normal bounty, 3 points. That's as much as like a daily challenging mission, which actually I think it might be 5, but still, it's 3 daily hard missions worth of specialist points for a bounty. So definitely worth doing. On top of that, bounties get considerably more lucrative when you work your way up the bounty chain. When you look at the bounty portion of your map, you're going to see that bounties are connected by red lines. You do the ones that you're able to do, and they're going to unlock harder bounties and harder bounties and harder bounties. And once you inevitably start doing the bounties that are near the top of that chain, you're now fighting 3 bosses instead of 1. And although that's more difficult, and you may want to get a friend to help you in this process, that's 3 boss drops from just a simple bounty. Usually it's an encounter in one area, one enclosed space. You can kill 3 bosses and get a considerable amount of high-end drops. Now, apart from bounties, there is one more activity I would highly recommend grinding to gear up, and that is control points. Good old control points that you've probably been doing a heck of a lot in Tier 4, especially because you get those blueprints. They're still very much worth doing, but only if you're very specific. Now, they can take a while, especially if you set them to level 4. In fact, that's the same diminishing returns thing that's happening with normal missions. Not worth putting them to level 4. It's too much work and too much extra time spent for not enough extra rewards. Now, if you have highly efficient builds and a couple of friends, then it may be worth it. You are also going to get 1 specialist point for doing so every time you beat level 4. But what I would highly recommend is look at the control points. Don't just look at what you can raise to level 3 and then beat, but look at what is actually around them. Remember that something like a territory controls are actually like key here. They're unbelievably fast to complete. You just have 1 wave of enemies, and you're guaranteed a loot crate with almost always a high-end drop in them every single time. So you do that, you automatically get a high-end drop. It takes you like less than a minute to do. Then your control point is level 2. Do 1 more activity, boom, it's level 3. Hit the control point. A level 3 control point is really not too much trouble, especially because you can make things way easier on yourself. You can specifically level up the control points that have the Gatling guns. And so you just beat the first wave of enemies, and then you get on the Gatling gun and absolutely destroy. It's like you're Thor in Avengers Endgame. Like you just show up, mow through enemies with that turret, and boom, it's completed in no time. So let's examine that scenario in terms of loot gained over a certain amount of time. Doing a territory control takes legitimately 45 seconds, guaranteed 1 high-end drop. Then roll over to a public execution, that's going to take 1 to 2 minutes, and probably you're going to get at least 1 high-end drop just from the enemies. Moving on from there, you have the actual control point itself. Probably about a 2-minute ordeal to beat the first wave of guys. If it has a Gatling gun, 45-second defend. That's around 5 minutes, and you've gotten the 2 drops before, and the supply room is going to give you 4 guaranteed high ends for the division chest, then another probably high end from the weapon chest, then another high end from the armor chest. That is 7 high-end drops in 5 to 6 minutes, and that's assuming you don't get any world drops when doing the control point. So it's likely to be even more than that, and if you are a good player with an efficient build, you can probably start cutting down at that time as well. Now, one more important thing I want to add is whilst doing this, try to look for not just territory controls, but the territory controls that have a little +2 beside it. Now, it's absolutely going to be more difficult than your average territory control. There's going to be more elite enemies, and there may even be a boss, but there's still only one wave of enemies. And generally, especially if you have some extra elite damage, you can mow through them pretty quickly. The boss is great because that's actually another drop if you're just farming stuff. But the real benefit is that once you kill that one group of enemies, you get a stash key to open multiple stashes. Like, you get to open 4 different boxes all containing high-end items. It's actually kind of insane. You're gonna get the same loot for doing just an elite territory control as you would for basically a challenging mission in like 1/10 the time. So absolutely worth doing just one of those and then strolling over to the now level 3 control point. And so, to summarize very quickly, if you want to get gear fast, if you have a full squad, it's the Dark Zone, the Occupied Dark Zone. If you don't, you're looking for only 1 or 2 other teammates, then probably farming bounties is extremely efficient, is going to help you in multiple facets of the game. But if you don't care about your specialist, control points, actually just whipping through control points, prioritizing ones that are easy to defend, especially ones that involve territory controls, are going to net you just so much more loot than just farming, challenging missions, for example. And so guys, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Division 2 content, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. Now, if you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at @RickKakis. That's linked in the description down below. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.